Smart objects were introduced into Photoshop a few versions back, and they have really changed the way that we can work with layers nowadays compared to what we did before. And again, they're really, really smart. So, of course, I'm going to show you how you can work with them. And today I'm going to show you the very basics. I'm going to take a look at two scenarios here that I definitely want to use smart objects in. That'll make a difference when you're designing. So the first one here is when you import a photo. So I've got here in Finder, I've got a photo.jpg, that I want to place into here. And normally I can go ahead and open up the photo inside of Photoshop as its own file. Let me do that. So I'm going to open up the photo here, click open. It's going to come in as its own new file, first in Camera Raw because it's a JPEG that's enabled in Camera Raw. I'm just going to click OK. So we get the photo.jpg here, which is, in all of its glory, what I do next is just drag this in to this file. And of course, it's going to come in really huge because it's a full-sized photo and I've got a small canvas here. So if I just free transform it, scaling it down here, you're going to see that I have a photo here in the end. But what I have now is just flat photo. If I wanted to do any change to this photo, I'd have to isolate this here and do the changes in the canvas. But if I were to introduce it as a smart object, I would get many benefits. So if I just throw this away, I'm going to close that file, and I'm going to instead go to File, come down to Place, and I'm going to choose photo.jpg. And this is going to get us into Camera Raw, because it's a Camera Raw enabled photo. So if I were to do any changes here, they'll be saved. I'm just going to click Enter to prepare it. So this is automatically going to come in as a smart object into Photoshop. So if I just reduce the size here a little bit, and just place it in on my white canvas, you'll see in the Layers panel here that we have the Smart Object icon here. So this is indeed a smart object. And what you can do with this, if I double click on this, it appears like any normal layer, but if I double click, I'm going to now be taken to Camera Raw. So this is true if you import a JPEG image, a TIFF image that you've been able to open in Camera Raw that came in to the file you're working with in Camera Raw. True for a DNG in Raw 2. It'll kind of come back into Camera Raw and I can do my modifications in Camera Raw here. Whatever I want to do, I'm just going to change it a lot so you can see the difference. Click OK, which is going to save it for now. It's going to prepare the smart object. And what we're going to have is the changed photo magically. And we didn't have to replace it. It's in there. And all we had to do is double click and do the edits. So that's one way of working with smart objects. And you can always undo this if you weren't happy with it. So smart objects make a whole lot of difference to importing photos like this when you're using them, because you can always go back in your composition. Another way to do it is if you're doing, say, text effects. So you can, if I hide this, or if I even, well, let's show it and let's add something below here. I'm going to grab my text tool, and I'm just going to type in, say, any text that I want in here, like this, and I'm just going to say photo. Going to reduce the size, it's going to come in huge. Let's see, I'm going to just make it black for now. Okay, so I want to do some effects to this. I want to go on working with this, and I don't necessarily mean layer styles. I'm going to do a lot of other things to this. But if I go ahead, now let's say I want to do a reflection here, because that's a very popular effect. So if I were to duplicate this, flip it around, I'd have to change two layers if I wanted to ever change out the word. But if I right click here and convert this to a smart object, it's going to be a smart object now. So this directly is not editable text. This, if I click on it, it's just going to create another text layer. But if I now go ahead and duplicate this, which is going to be photocopy, if I go ahead and flip this vertically, which I would be if I were to create this reflection, and if I add my gradient mask to this, layer mask, and then go into my gradient tool here and just fade it out like this, we have our reflection. If I want to change this now, because I duplicated the layer, this is the very same smart object in both instances. So if I double click on photo here, I get up photo.psb as a new file. We're taking the separate file. And if I go and change this to, now this won't fit, but let's say I change this to faux, exclamation mark. And I save this, hit save, close down the file. This is gonna automatically update in my Photoshop file. It does with this with every smart object contents that you put in there. Automatically update, and because we had it in 2 instances here, it updated the reflection as well. These are 2 really cool things you can do inside of Photoshop with smart objects, and this is really the basic of it. To get converting objects that you're going to reuse or want to control over and want to be able to change even after you worked with them, and convert them into smart objects and start using them.